All right, let's jump straight into this explainer on the newest Swiss watch export data. Now, if you just glance at the top-level numbers for May 2026, it honestly looks like an entirely unremarkable month, a totally boring flatline. But as we're going to see today, that calm surface stability, it's actually hiding some massive, literally chaotic shifts underneath. So if you think the global watch market is just standing still right now, well, think again. We're talking about deep structural shifts in what people are buying, what they're willing to pay, and exactly where in the world these watches are ending up.
So that brings us to the big question. What exactly happens when you peel back the layers of a market that looks perfectly still from the outside? I mean, when a massive global industry just flatlines, is it because nothing's happening? Or is it because extreme highs and severe lows are violently crashing into each other and basically perfectly canceling each other out on the balance sheet? It's kind of like two massive tidal waves colliding right in the dead center of the ocean.
To wrap our heads around this, we really need to anchor ourselves with this absolute monster of a figure, 2.1 billion Swiss francs. That's the total value of all Swiss watch exports for just the single month of May 2026. And the reason this matters so much is that moving the needle on a 2.1 billion franc ship takes an immense amount of economic force. A flat market at this scale, that doesn't mean stagnation. It means billions of dollars are shifting hands in some truly unexpected ways.
So, to make sense of this 2.1 billion franc puzzle, we're going to break it down into four key areas. 1. The stabilizing surface. 2. Materials driving the market. 3. The polarized price tags. And 4. Global winners and losers.
Let's kick things off with part 1, the stabilizing surface.
Now, May actually saw a slight 0.4% growth overall. And yeah, I know 0.4% sounds like a rounding error, but in reality, it helped mitigate a much rougher start to the year, bringing the cumulative 5-month decline to 3.1%. After a really steep drop back in April, this tiny little bump is essentially a steadying breath for an industry that was, frankly, starting to slide. It's that critical microcorrection that kept the broader economic narrative from, totally sounding the alarms.
Okay, let's move right into section 2, materials driving the market.
When you look at the actual physical makeup of these exported watches, a really stark contrast emerges. Bimetallic watches, those hybrid gold and steel models, along with alternative metals, are absolutely soaring right now. But at the exact same time, your traditional steel and precious metal pieces are taking a significant hit. We're witnessing a fundamental shift in what global consumers actually want on their wrists. The traditional stalwarts of the luxury world are rapidly losing ground to these hybrid designs, and it's completely reshaping the manufacturing landscape. Let me put this into perspective. There was a massive 34% jump in the value of gold steel models. 34%! But even that wasn't enough to stop an overall decline of almost 14,000 total watches exported this month. The crazy part? The actual volume of gold steel watches barely moved, down just 0.1%, but the revenue from them absolutely skyrocketed by 34%. Meanwhile, traditional steel watch volumes plummeted by nearly 10%, and precious metals plunged almost 15%. So what's happening here? Brands are selling fewer watches overall, but they're heavily hiking the prices of these specific hybrid models just to keep their bottom lines looking totally flat.
Which leads us perfectly into section 3. The polarized price tags.
What we're seeing right now is a dramatic barbell effect in pricing. Check this out. The entry-level tier, which is watches between 200 and 500 francs, surged by almost 24%. And the ultra-luxury tier, anything over 3,000 francs, grew by 3.7%. But that 500 to 3,000 franc middle section, it completely cratered, down 17.2%. Think about what this actually means for the broader global economy. Everyday consumers are flocking to affordable, entry-level pieces, while ultra-wealthy buyers are doubling down on pure luxury. That mid-tier market, which has historically been the absolute sweet spot for the middle class, is literally being hollowed out.
All right, finally, section 4, global winners and losers.
Now, the USA and the UK saw some really genuine, solid growth of 12.3% and almost 25% respectively. But then you look at France. France had a massive 57% explosion. Now, you might see that and think, wow, the French are suddenly buying up every luxury watch in sight. Actually, scratch that. The reality is way less romantic. France is simply acting as a new logistics hub right now. It's a perfect reminder that when we're talking about global exports, shipping routes can totally warp the data. Oh, and Hong Kong is finally showing sustained signs of a gradual recovery at plus 3.4%. But yeah, that massive French number, It's basically a logistical illusion. On the flip side, we've got the sinking markets. High volatility in China caused a severe 21.4% drop. And that is a devastating blow to the industry's volume, considering China is historically a massive consumer of luxury goods. Couple that with Germany dropping 18%, the UAE sliding 13.5%, and Japan dipping 3.5%, well, you start to see exactly why those high-priced gold steel watches had to do so much heavy lifting just to keep the global market at break even. The economic anchors of the luxury watch world are really dragging right now.
This really highlights the sheer concentration of power in this industry. Just the top 6 global markets control over half, 52.3% to be exact, of the entire 2.1 billion franc export value. The USA alone holds up over 14% of the total global trade. When just 6 countries dictate more than half of your entire revenue, a single economic slip in China or, say, a sudden logistical shift in France dictates the entire narrative for thousands of watchmakers operating back in Switzerland.
So, with the middle price tiers completely collapsing and the global map rapidly shifting underneath the seemingly flat 0.4% surface, we've got to ask ourselves where the industry is heading next. If consumers are completely abandoning that 500 to 3,000 franc middle ground, and major markets like China are acting highly volatile, the Swiss watch industry might honestly be facing an identity crisis masked as a stabilizing month. Will the great watchmakers of tomorrow only cater to the entry-level enthusiast and the ultra-wealthy elite? It's a huge, fascinating question to leave you with today.